with her presentation on the debate, the budget debate for 2014-2015. The next member who will be speaking here today will be the member for Choiseul, the Honorable Lorne Theophilus. He's also the Minister for Tourism.
May it please you, Mr. Speaker, I rise to make my contribution today as the voice of the people of Choiseul and Saltibus. A proud people, Mr. Speaker, who have vested their trust through me in this, the sitting government of St. Lucia. And as their voice, Mr. Speaker, I commend the appropriation bill. I support the initiatives which have been articulated by our Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the people of Choiseul and Saltibus believe that this nation should unanimously actually commend our Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, it takes a bold Minister of Finance to clearly articulate to the people of this country what the state of the times are. Despite the criticisms, to indicate to the people of this country the challenges that we have to face. And in his budget address this year, Mr. Speaker, our Prime Minister and Minister of Finance clearly explained to all what the realities of the time are. The options that we need to exercise, Mr. Speaker, as a government and as a people. He indicated, Mr. Speaker, for all to understand what this government proposes to do in order to get this country back onto the path of prosperity which it was on prior to the 2006 general elections, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I ask us all here to be honest within ourselves and to ask ourselves, where have we ever heard of a government that had the ability to reduce its deficit from the sum of 9.2% to 5.7% without the benefit of an IMF-induced program? Mr. Speaker, this alone should signal to all within this chamber and those without, Mr. Speaker, that the policies that this government has implemented thus far, Mr. Speaker, are in fact the right ones. And by adherence to the policies of this government, we will see St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, on the path of economic recovery, onward to the path of prosperity. And this is what we are here to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our statistics record that there are declines in total expenditure by some 6.9% to 126.7 million, and a decline in capital expenditure to 258 million. Mr. Speaker, for that alone, this government should be applauded over and over again within this chamber, from the members on this side and the members opposite, Mr. Speaker, for within their time they did not have the ability to do what we have managed to do within 2 years, Mr. Speaker. The reality, Mr. Speaker, is that despite the fact that we are making these gains, these reductions, that the impact on the overall deficit, Mr. Speaker, is insufficient. The fact is simple, Mr. Speaker. We need, more than ever, Mr. Speaker, to reduce our expenditure. We cannot continue, Mr. Speaker, to create charges against the public purse and obligations to be borne by future generations of St. Lucians by continuing to borrow to meet our recurrent expenditure, Mr. Speaker. So drastic steps and measures need to be taken at this juncture, Mr. Speaker, in order to alleviate that situation. Mr. Speaker, before coming into office, this government, Mr. Speaker, in its typical pattern of honesty, was honest with the people of this country. And we indicated to them, Mr. Speaker, in the book which is a document of the House called the Blueprint for Growth, which members opposite, I think, should keep and absorb. We indicated, Mr. Speaker, that the economic challenges were serious. And we were honest with the people of this country. And Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to digress into a paragraph or so from the Blueprint for Growth, Mr. Speaker, I will indicate what this government said to the people of this country before the assumption of office. Page 5 of the Blueprint for Growth, Mr. Speaker, it indicates the economy of St. Lucia is facing its most severe and debilitating crisis since independence. After the general elections of 2006, the economy immediately started to contract after several years of solid growth. Fact again. In the midst of this downward spiral, the global recession hit us with devastating impact. To this day, no one can identify the policies to respond to the crisis. As if all of this was not enough, Hurricane Thomas gave us a lethal blow and left behind a battered infrastructure. Now we face a huge reconstruction bill. We also articulated, Mr. Speaker, the ways that the crisis that we saw for the country manifested itself and articulated them at page 5 of the Blueprint for Growth, Mr. Speaker. So when we come to the House today, Mr. Speaker, and as the Prime Minister has done on occasion after occasion, and indicated the state of the economy, Mr. Speaker, persons cannot come and say it's a creation of this government. Prior to coming into government, Mr. Speaker, we articulated it in no other document but the Blueprint for Growth when we presented ourselves to the electorate of this country. Mr. Speaker, it is with a sense of, let me use my words well, maybe I should say amusement, that I listen in this honorable House time and time again to the contributions of the member for Castries Southeast, Mr. Speaker. And one of the things I probably should point by way of digressing, since I observe that I am on the committee which deals with the standing orders, that probably the appropriate time has come for us to look at the standing orders, because, Mr. Speaker, it is important that the contributions in this House be contributions of truth. Because time and time again, Mr. Speaker, through members on this side and through the chair, Mr. Speaker, that you now sit on, we have had to make corrections to the deliveries of the member for Castries Southeast, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that they are either fabrications, concoctions, but no, Mr. Speaker, in fact, I'm proud of the member for Denry South today because he found Christ. However, through his silence, Mr. Speaker, he aids, through his silence, also the leader of the opposition, they aid and abet, despite the fact that they can find Christianity today, aid and abet the breach of the 7th commandment of our Lord and Savior by allowing the member for Castries Southeast to distort the truth within this honorable House. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I listened as the member for Castries Southeast, Mr. Speaker, was brazen enough in his presentation to ask the question, you know, why are we where we are today? I said, Mr. Speaker, the reasons are simple, very simple. You know, when you pay to your own family $240,250 for a project worth $65,561.72. This is why we are here today, Mr. Speaker. One, when you support, Mr. Speaker, your now political leader, Mr. Speaker, in spending $3.4 million, Mr. Speaker, in 6 hours on Boxing in Paradise, Mr. Speaker. And included in this breakdown on Boxing in Paradise, Mr. Speaker, hear this. Those who come here and piously talk about the waste of government resources. $565,658.58 for the production of the event. And more, there's more. And $815,070 as a fee to the promoter for this event. Goosen. Mr. Speaker, you know what? The better thing for me to do? I will make all the records pertaining to Boxing in Paradise, since we've alluded it so many times. I will make every record, Mr. Speaker, every cent of expenditure, a document of the House, Mr. Speaker, at this current time, so that generations of St. Lucians can look back and see what others did when they held the reins of government with the finances of the poor people of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, I make this a document of the House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is amazing, Mr. Speaker, when we hear criticisms about the injection in Carnival, and we hear all sorts of people telling us we don't inject enough money into Carnival. Whilst there are budget cuts, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance saw it necessary to retain the $1.1 million that has been injected in Carnival, decided that there will be no cuts to the budget that is allocated for the production of this, which is our largest cultural event, Mr. Speaker. You know, an event such as Carnival, which, Mr. Speaker, enables St. Lucians through the various events that are staged to earn a living. Over the space of a month, $1.1 million to produce this event. Mr. Speaker, the cost of Boxing in Paradise, the 6 hours of Boxing in Paradise, supersedes that by 3. Yeah, by 300%. They will not criticize that, but they criticize us for $1.1 million being allocated to Carnival. Hypocrites. There's a song, Hypocrite, Hypocrite. I wish I could sing it. Mr. Speaker, even further, if you add what the capital budget for Carnival is to the monies that we spend on the Labor Day, something that was big in the mouth of our critics, the Labor Day bolstered branding initiative, those two events, Mr. Speaker, did not even attain the amount of $1.3 million. Those two events. I'm getting to the tent. And with the bolstered branding initiative, Mr. Speaker, we brought not just St. Lucian talent, but the name and logo of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, into the households and minds of over 15 million viewers, Mr. Speaker. An initiative that we supported then, and we will continue. We will continue during the course of this year through the Ministry of the Creative Industries. Mr. Speaker, it's apt, after referring to the bolstered branding initiative, to point out that when this government, and more so, when this minister engages in staging any event, I can assure the people of this country that that event will lead both direct and indirect benefits to the people of this country. There will be no self-aggrandizing events engaged in, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on assuming office, one of the first criticisms, apart from them saying that I don't know what I'm about, and things like that, and that we would not be able to turn the tides of tourism, Another criticism up front, Mr. Speaker, was the decision to move the opening of jazz back to the Mindu Philip grounds, Mr. Speaker. And more specifically, forget the place, The fact is that we moved it there and we moved the opening back to the people of St. Lucia. And that is what the decision was about, Mr. Speaker. Because the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, are the ones who bear the obligation to pay the loan that we take every year to stage jazz, Mr. Speaker. We brought it back to them. But, Mr. Speaker, when all of them criticize you, I've been blamed for always saying the numbers will speak for themselves, just as they've done with tourism. The numbers, Mr. Speaker, have spoken for themselves. And, Mr. Speaker, the people of this country have responded. Just casual numbers. In the first year, Mr. Speaker, in the first year for staging the opening of the Jazz Festival at the Marshall Ground, at the Mindu Philip Park, we had just a little over 5,000 patrons, Mr. Speaker, there. They attended. In the second year, we were a hair stone below 7,000 patrons at the opening of the Jazz and Arts Festival. And guess what, Mr. Speaker? Guess what? This year, Mr. Speaker, the people of St. Lucia answered all the critics, and we had a sold-out event. Over 10,000 patrons, Mr. Speaker, came to the opening of the Jazz and Arts Festival at the Mindu Philip Park. At the Mindu Philip Park, Mr. Speaker, in Marshall. So I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, the people of this country for embracing the concept of the Jazz and Arts Festival. I want to go further, Mr. Speaker, to point out, knock on wood, they say. I want to go further, but to point out, ever since we staged the opening of the Jazz and Arts Festival in Marshall, there has been no incident, Mr. Speaker. No incident. And the people, we've managed to change through this the lives of many people. They can look forward every year to an event that brings tremendous revenue to the homes of the people of Marshall, Mr. Speaker. I thank them. I thank them for embracing it in such a way. Yes, they do. Mr. Speaker, last year, I remember again last year, when we launched, again to the tent, Mr. Speaker. When we launched, Mr. Speaker, the Jazz and Arts Festival, again, we indicated, Mr. Speaker, to all, that in the year when we engaged in this pilot project, that what we would have done, that the initiative would have cost more, Mr. Speaker, at that stage. Because at that stage, as a pilot project, we intended to focus critically on the infusion of the arts in the Jazz Festival. So it would mean that we would have to engage in additional expenditure, Mr. Speaker. So we spent more money than would have previously been spent initially on the Jazz Festival. But, Mr. Speaker, what we invested in the Jazz and Arts Festival cannot compare to the $977,715.09 spent on Amy Winehouse for the former minister and leader now of the political leader, Mr. Alan Shastner, yes, who single-handedly goes in and brings in Amy Winehouse. Now, I'll take a cue from my senior in Parliament, and I'll pull off this leaf, Mr. Speaker, and add to it the bill that we paid for that performance, Mr. Speaker, so it can become a document of the House too. $977,715.09 for what was a rather unique performance. Yeah? So, definitely. So, Mr. Speaker, for half hour of a show, we spent more that we invested, Mr. Speaker, in many local artists, and we are criticized for our injection of resources in our people. Mr. Speaker, we will take the blow. Take the blow. but we'll continue to invest in our local people. Mr. Speaker, yes, we were criticized because it's cost $8 million, Mr. Speaker. But $8 million for an event, Mr. Speaker, that lasted over 2 weeks. $8 million for the development of fringe events. $8 million, Mr. Speaker, for showcasing our talent, our St. Lucian talent, and our St. Lucian people, so that the world can enjoy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, imagine the economic value that each time we stage a fringe event, the economic value to the various communities, Mr. Speaker. That cannot be overlooked. So we continue to host these events, Mr. Speaker. And guess what? $8 million. How can that $8 million, Mr. Speaker, compared to the very same $8 million that was invested by the former Minister of Tourism in CHA Marketplace? Now I get to the tent. CHA Marketplace and the FCCA conference. Where are my receipts? Yes, Mr. Speaker. I had them here, but I'll get them again. Mr. Speaker, now in the breakdown of the expenses, there's $8 million and $4.3 million which was spent for FCCA conference. Let us read. Page 1. Rent, install, removal of temp structure, and rental of tent. $884,296.61. A tent that is exported out of this country, Mr. Speaker. But you know that this then Honorable Alan Chastney, I will make every part of the bills associated with the hosting of this event a document of the House. So all those who want to distort figures, go to this. Go to that. See if we don't lie here. Yeah, $800,000. Mr. Speaker, you see, they criticize us for that, for investing money, Mr. Speaker, in acquiring a home for the SSDF, Mr. Speaker. They rent a tent that comes into St. Lucia and leaves for $800 and something, almost $900,000. You see what they'd prefer? They prefer us to continue renting from daddy and own nothing. That's what they'd prefer. Yeah? You see, Mr. Speaker, this year, Jazz and Arts, despite the challenges, the fact that the Tourist Board had to respond to the charge of the government to do more with less, Mr. Speaker, the fact that we contracted our budget for the production of the Jazz and Arts Festival by some 40%, and the records are there to show it. We managed, Mr. Speaker, to increase the ticket sales this year to 24,411, over last year's record of 20,230. So we are doing the right things, Mr. Speaker, as a government. We're doing a right thing in the interest of the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, the ministries under my charge have acknowledged their role in the economic future and the viability of this country. Mr. Speaker, the Economic and Social Review articulates very clearly our successes. Record-breaking as they were, Mr. Speaker, this year. We are not planning on sitting on our laurels, Mr. Speaker. And despite those achievements, despite the growth in stayover arrivals by some 4%, our growth in stayover arrivals, we are planning, Mr. Speaker, to build on what we did in 2013-2014 and to grow arrivals in St. Lucia by another 4% in 2014 and 2015. Mr. Speaker, in 2013-2014, with less money, we brought more visitors into the island of St. Lucia, stayover, than ever before. We attained more international accolades than before. And going further, Mr. Speaker, the most important thing, which is why this Minister of Tourism and makes the sacrifices and encourages my entire team from the Tourist Board and the Ministry of Tourism to make the sacrifices that are necessary. It is that we increase the revenue generated to this country through the tourism sector by some 11%, Mr. Speaker. That is what it's about. Not just spending money on all kinds of things that you want and you like, and you're not bringing the returns to the country. Yes, it's better you keep your mouth shut and let the numbers speak for itself and let the people of this country benefit from your work, Mr. Speaker, than shooting your mouth out on TV every day with your nice accent. Yeah, well, they say accents that are not of St. Lucian origin are nice. Some people say so. Some say. Authenticity. It's true. So I'm hoping that the leader of the opposition presents a more authentic. Anyway. Mr. Speaker, during this last year, Mr. Speaker, with our contracted budget, Mr. Speaker, we still managed to put St. Lucia into the eyes of the public, Mr. Speaker, through events such as The Bachelor, the 50th edition of Sports Illustrated, the swimsuit edition, and more, and more. Increased our airlift, Mr. Speaker. Now, when you hear of a government with a contracted budget increasing the airlift, you hear them all, when we assumed office, oh, we need more airlift, we need more airlift. Yes, we agree we need more airlift. But what we have indicated, Mr. Speaker, that you must achieve an increase in airlift without burdening the public purse by engaging in minimum revenue guarantees. So we increased airlift by some 11+%, but we did it without minimum revenue guarantees, Mr. Speaker. So there's no greater burden on the public purse whilst we increase the airlift to the country. It's a ministry working, Mr. Speaker. A government that is working whilst we implement the policies for change and the development of our country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in this fiscal year, we will continue to employ a focused marketing approach and strategy, Mr. Speaker, and will engage in a number of activities during the course of the year, Mr. Speaker. Targeted marketing approach. And with our limited budget, Mr. Speaker, a greater emphasis will be placed on specific types of PR, use of social media, and use of other mechanisms, Mr. Speaker, which will still enhance our visibility, but at the same time, curtailing our expenditure. We plan, Mr. Speaker, on engaging in continuing the showcases on St. Lucia and to bring over 750 travel agents to St. Lucia during the course of this year from all different source markets. The Prime Minister, in his budget address, alluded to what we have done in the penetration of Brazil and Latin America, and that will continue as well, Mr. Speaker. Before we engage in any deliberations with the airlines to get airlift there, Mr. Speaker, we will have sensitized the market and created a demand for St. Lucia within Latin America. After that demand is created, then, Mr. Speaker, you go in with that demand in hand, and now you deliberate with the airlines and tell them, yes, now we wish to engage in an arrangement with you in order to bring those people who want to come to the destination to the destination. A targeted approach, Mr. Speaker, and the approach of a thinking group of people, a thinking group of technocrats who have finally been allowed to do their job, Mr. Speaker, by not having a know-all Minister of Tourism as the Minister of Tourism. Mr. Speaker, our market penetration in North American, UK, and the Caribbean region, Mr. Speaker, will also continue. More so, Mr. Speaker, the intention of this government to continue to pursue initiatives that are beneficial to the small hotel sector, who we can't forget. So the initiatives that we embark upon in the Caribbean and in some specific markets, Mr. Speaker, enable us to engage in a targeted market approach which is beneficial to the small hotel sector. That we will continue to pursue. Now, Mr. Speaker, we will also continue, and I must mention that, Mr. Speaker, in our efforts at marketing the destination to show that there are different facets to the uniqueness of St. Lucia. And we will use our culinary ambassador, Mr. Speaker, as a key tool in the marketing of this destination, and in our efforts to raise the standard of our local and traditional cuisine to international standards for marketing and the presentation within our hotels in St. Lucia. This will also enable us, Mr. Speaker, to create a direct link. We have already noted the increase in produce that has been purchased from our hotel sector, but it will further enhance the relationship that exists between the tourism industry and the agricultural sector, so that there's a multiple and ripple benefit to the people of this country through the investment that we make in tourism. Mr. Speaker, whilst all of this has been happening, the people who sometimes feel it most, Mr. Speaker, are the people of Choiseul and Saltibus. Mr. Speaker, the people of Choiseul and Saltibus are proud of the achievements and the accomplishments of their parliamentary representative. And they only understand, Mr. Speaker, my absence from the constituency from time to time, when they see the results that you bring and the importance of these results to our country as a whole. Yeah, Samran, yeah. Mr. Speaker, we are now, Mr. Speaker, at the halfway mark, as we call it. And in the presence, Mr. Speaker, today, I am proud to have in the gallery some esteemed members from my constituency, people who I rely on, Mr. Speaker, some of them I rely on, in order to implement the plans and policies of this government and this minister for the development of the constituency of Choiseul. So I want to not only acknowledge and applaud them, and Mr. Speaker, you will realize their difference. They will sit in the gallery. They'll send no notes to their minister in breach of the practices of this house. Thank God, Mr. Speaker, you determined yesterday that you would allow electronics to be used so that no one will have to see that sordid practice happening here once again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, coach, stay for me, man. Mr. Speaker, the report for the constituency of Choiseul and Saltibus, Mr. Speaker, addresses the period 2011 to the current 2014, Mr. Speaker, and touches on the issues of job creation, salaries, wages paid to workers, and the other activities that we have engaged in. And before I end my contribution, I will allude to some of the activities that we will embark on during the course of this year, based upon the vote that is given to us under the constituency, under the CDP, and from the various ministries, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the ministry, under the CDP, which comes under the heading of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, Mr. Speaker, during the period of 2011 to 2014, Mr. Speaker, we completed some 56 projects, Mr. Speaker, within the constituency of Choiseul. And these projects are varied, Mr. Speaker. They vary from roads, concrete roads, footpaths, drains in the various parts of the constituency. Mr. Speaker, the important thing, it is that these projects were not embarked upon from any political standpoint, but what they were done were projects that were carefully selected because they impact and change the lives of the people of Choiseul and Saltibus, Mr. Speaker. And that is what is important. And on the issue of changing lives, Mr. Speaker, I want to allude to a particular area, the area of Esperas, Mr. Speaker, which for years had been forgotten. What we did this year, Mr. Speaker, under the CDP, We went into Esperance and a cost of $234,120.37. What we did, Mr. Speaker, is that we put in roads, we put in drainage, and materially enhanced the lives of the people of Esperance, Mr. Speaker. You see, to those who live in nice areas, drive nice SUV and all kind of things like that, Mr. Speaker, they will not appreciate it when a garbage truck can't come to your home. They will not appreciate it when an ambulance can't come to you. They will not appreciate it, Mr. Speaker, when you buy groceries, but you have to stop at the bottom of a hill and carry them up that hill, or get some people from the community to assist you. They will not appreciate it. But these people who can now enjoy these things, Mr. Speaker, who can now take produce and get them carried to their house and from their gardens to areas where they can sell them, Mr. Speaker, are pleased with what this government has done, pleased with how we have utilized the constituency development program, and thank the government for the continuation of this program in 2014 and 2015, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, as a result, Mr. Speaker, of the CDP, we employed, Mr. Speaker, 60 contractors. 60 contractors. Yes? And out of this, a total of 358 people were employed. Jobs. The same thing we came in and said we will do, Mr. Speaker. We created jobs for the people of Choiseul and Saltibus through the CDP. Mr. Speaker, you see, under CDP, interesting, eh? All these projects since we've been in, undertaken at a cost of $1.803743 million. $1,803,743. Projects under the CDP thus far. And this is continuing. You see, you hear, Mr. Speaker, in this house, people talking about, we're not doing for the Malay and the poor people. But those very same people, Mr. Speaker, when they controlled the Ministry of Communications and Works, decided that rather than do like this minister has done and spread $1,800,000 over his constituency, gave $1,747,059 to one person, his brother, one contractor. So what gives them the moral authority, Mr. Speaker, to stand in this house and say we don't care for the poor people of this country? When in your tenure, you saw one poor person. One person. Yeah, I know God said to help yourself. He didn't say to do it this way, with the funds of the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, moving on. Under the Ministry of Infrastructure, Port Services and Transport, Mr. Speaker, a new celebrity in Choiseul is the Minister for Infrastructure, Port Services and Transport, because the people of Choiseul and Saltibus have waited long to have their infrastructural needs addressed, Mr. Speaker. And this year, Mr. Speaker, this year, you heard the pronouncements by the Prime Minister in his budget address, Mr. Speaker. You heard the pronouncements, and during this year, Mr. Speaker, we will see a number of roads done within Choiseul and Saltibus. Actually, Mr. Speaker, on page 37, Balka, Daba, Monjac, Fiat. Mr. Speaker, these are areas, Mr. Speaker, that suffered for years. And these places will be addressed. Monjac has already started. Monjac has already started, and the others will be done. We say thank you, Mr. Speaker, to the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. We say thank you to the Minister of Infrastructure, Port Services and Transport. And whilst we are at it, Minister, thank you very much for relieving the people of PI Saltibus, Mr. Speaker, by the road which was done, the work which was done on that main road. We thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during the last 2 years, Mr. Speaker, what we saw a variety of work done, which includes, Mr. Speaker, work done recently in the area of the PI Secondary School at a sum of $100,000. It might seem like a little bit of money to some who are accustomed to million-dollar projects. But what this does, Mr. Speaker, it enables all the children at the PI secondary school, Mr. Speaker, as the rainy season approaches, they know they don't have to walk through a river to get to school. And if this were a consideration in the past, Mr. Speaker, the former government would have ensured that this was addressed, because it affects the lives of the children of this country who are the future of this land of ours, Mr. Speaker. But this government did it. And we are happy and proud to indicate that we've managed to accomplish this, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through the Ministry of Infrastructure, over $1,004,187 was injected into the constituency of Choiseul and Saltibus for a variety of works, road works, flood mitigation works, desilting of rivers and waterways, debushing of roads, painting of schools, general repairs to schools, plumbing works, electrical works, amongst others, Mr. Speaker. As a direct result of this, Mr. Speaker, we employed over 135 people from my constituency of Choiseul and Saltibus, Mr. Speaker, enabling them, Mr. Speaker, to contribute to the betterment of their lives and the lives of their children, Mr. Speaker. Thank you once again, Minister of Infrastructure, Port Services and Transport. Thank you to the government of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, for what you have done for the people of Choiseul and Saltibus, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this is only the beginning. Only the beginning. We've also heard, Mr. Speaker, that the plight of the students from the Reunion School, the Choiseul Secondary School, are going to be addressed, Mr. Speaker, as well, out of a loan which was taken from the CDB, Mr. Speaker. So I thank the government, Mr. Speaker, for what they have done. A regular criticism, Mr. Speaker, of this government, you know, you hear them. The same people want to use STEP and want to use the same program, complain that they don't get enough from them, criticize the very programs. But, Mr. Speaker, these social programs are important, because what these do is that they help to transform the lives, Mr. Speaker, of some people who ordinarily could not do better for themselves, Mr. Speaker. So I am grateful, Mr. Speaker, that despite all the challenges that this government has had to face, despite the fiscal crunch that we are in, that this government has maintained those social programs. STEP, Mr. Speaker, the poor people, the Malawi that some of them always refer to and try to mamagai. Mr. Speaker, the STEP program will continue. And however, between the years of 2011 and 2014, through this program, we've managed to employ 2,703 people within the constituency of Choiseul and Saltibus, Mr. Speaker. 2,703 lives plus that have been positively impacted by the injection of resources by the government of St. Lucia into the people of St. Lucia. I thank this government for it, Mr. Speaker. This came, Mr. Speaker, at a cost of $1,338,665, which was paid to the workers within that program. And you tell me this is not a caring government? Mr. Speaker, in addition, through the SSDF, Mr. Speaker, projects totaling $330,845.57 were undertaken in the various communities: Esperance, Monjack, Park Estate, River Dore, Dibrel, Detukanawi, Dakite, which resulted in the engaging of over 11 contractors and 50 tradesmen and laborers within our constituency, Mr. Speaker. And even more is coming. More is coming. During the course of this year, Mr. Speaker, we will see the reconstruction of the Roblo and PI community centers, Mr. Speaker. And thanks to the initiatives, Mr. Speaker, of the parliamentary rep for the constituency of Choiseul and Saltibus, and a very strong and formidable team of workers who aid the parliamentary rep, we will see the furnishing and outfitting of these community centers with computers and equipment for the benefit of the people of these communities, Mr. Speaker. This year, we completed work on Daba and Morgouge at a cost of some $347,080. We also heard, Mr. Speaker, of the training component that is going to be done by the SSDF. Mr. Speaker, we are thankful for the continuation of these social programs, Mr. Speaker, at this time. Mr. Speaker, under NICE, NICE is a very unique program, Mr. Speaker. Unique program. And under the NICE program, Mr. Speaker...
Honourable Member, you have 15 minutes remaining.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. We have over some 49 people are engaged in full-time employment through the NICE program, Mr. Speaker. And they receive annual salaries of $628,623, Mr. Speaker. We are happy, Mr. Speaker, that this program is being continued despite our struggles, because we see the importance of this program and how it transforms the lives of the people of this country. Who can argue, Mr. Speaker, of the home care? Who can argue of the importance of this to our seniors? Yes, our senior citizens, those who have contributed materially to the growth of our communities, and in the twilight of the years have no one to take care of them, Mr. Speaker. Only a heartless, conscienceless set of people, Mr. Speaker, would argue against the continuation of a program that is beneficial to our elder statesmen, Mr. Speaker. We are thankful that this continues. Mr. Speaker, additionally under the NICE program, Mr. Speaker, there were infrastructural projects up to $155,000 were done within the communities of Montjacques, Boisden, and Dibrel. And some 20 people were employed during the construction phases of these projects, Mr. Speaker. And whilst I speak about, Mr. Speaker, about creation of employment, you would think that it ends here. Mr. Speaker, during this year, Mr. Speaker, we plan on transforming the harbor of Choiseul, transforming that front, Mr. Speaker, so that we can make Choiseul more viable as a tourism outlet, Mr. Speaker. We've done the cultural mapping within Choiseul as well to create stores and attractions which are beneficial to the people of Choiseul, so that they can see and benefit from the labors of their parliamentary representative, who is the Minister of Tourism, amongst others, Mr. Speaker. The people of our community, Mr. Speaker, have shown their immense talent, Mr. Speaker. And through the Creative Industries Ministry, which I also head, Mr. Speaker, island-wide, we've created direct employment for some 421 people, Mr. Speaker, through our programs, JT, SLAM, the New York Branding Initiative, through grants, St. Cecilia's Day activities, and various forms of strategic support. And this, Mr. Speaker, with the vote of $1 million given to us, we will continue, Mr. Speaker, during this current year. During this current year, we will do so, Mr. Speaker. So all in all, Mr. Speaker, we are grateful, Mr. Speaker, that this government has the vision and the focus, Mr. Speaker, to do what is necessary, to be bold enough, through a budget address, to let the people of this country know, look, times are tough, but despite the tough times, these are the decisions we have to take to make things better. But despite taking those tough decisions, we will still do things which are beneficial to you, still do things to ensure that the poor people of this country, Mr. Speaker, are not adversely affected by the initiatives of this government. So, Mr. Speaker, it is with an open heart that I commend the initiatives of this government, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the people of Choiseul and Saltibus, I support the initiatives that have been articulated by our Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Mr. Speaker. Before leaving again, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you, as usual, for how you preside over this honorable House, Mr. Speaker. Even though today, Mr. Speaker, I realize that there may have been challenges, as it's better than you are shown to read the verse of the Bible than to have the Bible thrown at you in a manner which is unacceptable. However, Mr. Speaker, despite the challenges, we on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, are determined that this will always be an honorable House, Mr. Speaker. That what we say here, Mr. Speaker, we can substantiate. And what we do here as a government will redound to the benefit of the people of St. Lucia. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.